So my first question to you is if you could give us an update as to what is the situation on the ground. And we would, of course, want to know from you about the larger political context here, about the larger narrative which needs to be understood as well.
Well, it's a very tense situation on the ground at the moment. Over the last few days, we've seen coachloads of people, essentially RSS supporters, go over from London, from Birmingham, and other places to Leicester to try and create trouble. Basically, they would like to provoke some sort of a riot or conflict, which they can then go and use in India. In terms of whipping up further Islamophobia and also creating this, not creating, but strengthening the already existing narrative of Hindus as victims. And this whole notion of the Hindus as victims has now led, particularly in Britain, to this idea of Hinduphobia, which they have been working on for several years. In fact, they have very close links. The RSS here has very close links with Zionist organizations. And as you probably know, to criticize Israel is very often dubbed in this country as anti-Semitic. And they want to do something similar so that any critic of Modi would be then labeled a Hinduphobe. So they are trying to build this narrative, and they're hoping that Leicester would give them the opportunity to strengthen it further. So that's essentially, it's a very, very difficult situation from that point of view. And, in creating this sort of conflict, they don't mind throwing the Hindus under the bus. And what's interesting about Leicester is that there are two particular communities which are of significance here, Hindu communities. One is the people who came from East Africa, who are now comparatively well off, well organized, and they are the ones who are really deeply involved with the RSS, influenced by the RSS, pushing RSS policies and so on. The second community are people who came much more recently from Daman, the Portuguese, ex-Portuguese colony, and they've come via Portugal. Now they are a very poor community, and they are being used in this context. Not only are they poor, they face a lot of racism in this country, much more than the people who came initially from East Africa. And the extent of racism is such that in many areas, the children of that community have to be bussed out of that area to stop them being attacked by white racists. Now, the other thing which I think is very important for us to realize is that the ultra-right fascist, white British groups are supporting the RSS. There was a demonstration a couple of days ago where we saw, obviously it was a Hindutva-led demonstration, but they were all wearing masks. Some of them had weapons in their hands. And the people who were wearing masks, if you look closely, you could see that several of them, their hands were white.
Another missile! Another missile! This is what the Hindu mobs are doing! Look, another missile right now, there you go! Red-handed!
It had started on Saturday when a group of mainly Hindu men marched 2.5 miles to the east of the city, which is predominantly Muslim.
Come on, look, you got a weapon in his hand and you're allowing it! Man's got a weapon and you're allowing it!
This video shows a Hindu flag being pulled down from outside a temple. What it doesn't show is that a Muslim imam was there trying to stop the crowds. Much of the footage has gone viral, used in propaganda videos. The violence hasn't come as a surprise to everyone in this city. Leicester is often held up as a model of integration, but is that view outdated? In recent years, a number of new communities have settled here, partly attracted by the city's prosperity. A small minority have been accused of bringing with them the politics of an extreme right-wing Hindu nationalism from India or Hindutva ideology. Although it's been widely reported that the initial violence was sparked by a cricket match, that's not what's going on in this city. The tensions have been bubbling away for some months now. The police and the local authorities have been accused by some residents of failing to understand what's going on here. There's evidence that some of these groups from across the country had organised coaches of supporters to travel to Leicester during the disorder. Of 47 arrests, over half were of people who live outside the city.
And people were saying that these are the people from the Britain First, which is a fascist organization, the English Defence League, and also a new organization called the Patriotic Alliance, who are pretty vicious from what we can see. So it's a really toxic and dangerous coming together of essentially of fascist elements. And so that's what we're up against. And at the same time, progressives in Leicester, as well as, of course, outside, are calling for peace and unity because, you know, we don't want these ideologies to be exported to this country, you know.
Absolutely. And what would you suggest? I mean, how do you see this transpiring at the level of as in terms of what is going on in India as well, and in terms of the atmosphere that we see here? This is the pattern that we've been seeing recently in India as well.
I think that's a very key question because ultimately that's what it's about. Now, in the earlier phase, we had the RSS groups raising funds hugely. You know, after the Gujarat earthquake, they raised funds which actually went to the RSS and some of the attackers in the Gujarat genocide. And this has carried on through an organization called Seva International, which was exposed on the television, but it still continues to raise funds under various names sometimes. But now, and they also established themselves using British multicultural policies in this country, set up shakas all over the place and so on. But now we are seeing a much more worrying new phase where they're going to try and create conflict, open conflict, in order to push the narrative of Hindus as victims, which of course we know that, you know, it's been used vastly in India. In fact, you know, that's one of the key aspects of getting support, that, you know, we as Hindus are suffering, you know, we are being attacked. And we in Britain have noticed how this has evolved, you know, how they got help from the Zionists in order to build this notion of Hinduphobia and how they're using it now. So every critic of Modi is dubbed a Hinduphobe.